In the previous video, we covered component fundamentals, what components are, how to create them, and how to work with properties. In this video, we're taking it further with component variants, how to make one component adapt its look, structure, and behavior without duplicating it and creating another component. We'll go through 5 approaches, starting simple and building up. By the end, you'll have a solid toolkit for flexible, reusable components. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. Dynamic data and component properties cannot be written into CSS files. However, they can be written into HTML. Simplest way to create stylistic component variants is to swap a class based on HTML property class. Let's begin. I will create a component from the button element. Let's begin with the button label. And now let's create a variant property. We'll use select type with 3 options. I will use classes I have pre-made. I'll make this one the default. Now let's bind the property to the class attribute. I'll select my element, go to attributes, create class, and click on the green button to select the variant. Now let's bind the other 2 properties so that we can use the button. First the label, then the link, and let's close the button. Delete the HTML buttons and duplicate our component. Here we'll switch to tonal, then outline. And done. This is changing styles using the class attribute. Let's now do something similar, but using the attribute. This is the same idea like the class swap, but a different approach. Here is a logo card. I want a dark theme toggle for such card, but instead of a class, I want to use a data attribute. Here I have already created such attribute, and if I type true here, it's going to turn dark. Let me quickly show you the CSS. Here, for this attribute, I have changed the values of the background color and the text color when this attribute is attached to an element. I also change it and apply it to all the elements within it. This is a simple implementation. There are different ways to achieve this. What we need to do now is use our component property to change this value here. First, let's create a component. Let's now create a component property to change the value of the data attribute. I will use the true-false type of component property and call it dark theme. And by default, it's going to be set to false. Then I'm going to select my outer wrapper element, then go to my attribute, and here select dark theme. Because the default is false or not dark, it has immediately changed to light version. Going out of the component, I can now test. When dark theme is on or true, the card picks up new colors. Everything inside inherits them. Toggle the prop, the theme switches. Clean and contained. Now that we know how to change the styles, let's control what content shows up inside the component, but conditionally. This is the same logo card. We will create 2 ways to add a logo. First, paste it as an SVG code directly, using the SVG code element, or use an image to upload an image of the logo. I don't want both at once. They're mutually exclusive. These are options. So when I create two props, I will link them with conditions to show either one or the other. One component, but two ways to use it. Let's first set the properties. First, I'm going to use the text property and call it SVG logo. Leave it empty and you'll later see why. Then image, call it image logo. Now let's bind it. So I'm going to go to image, find my image logo property, then go to SVG and choose the SVG logo property. Now these are linked, but if I would use them now, they would both render. So let's connect them now to the conditions. What I want to do is this. I want the logic where SVG code should show if two conditions are met. First, if there is some code in it, so it's not empty. Second, if the image is empty and doesn't have anything in it. So let's begin with setting up the SVG code. Go up here and click on the conditions toggle, choose new condition and search for dynamic. Then we have to select the property to test against. So I'm going to start with SVG logo, which needs to be not empty. Then I want to click on add. And here I'm setting up a second condition with the and operator between, which means both of these conditions need to be verified before we can render this element. So data, I will now select the image logo, and this one I'm going to set to is empty. I'll then move to logo and do the same, but with opposite values. So dynamic data, image logo is not empty, and dynamic data, SVG logo is empty. This is why they had to not have any default content, because then this test whether they're empty or not wouldn't work. We now go out of the component and try it. First one, I'm gonna go to selecting of the image. I have a bunch of logos here, but they're all black, so you don't see them, but I kind of see them. I'll use this one. So first one works. Second, I'll go here and click on something like this. Nice. And next, let's choose this one. And let's see how our dark theme works. Good. So I've created two properties and linked each one with a condition. So now if I use one, the other one disappears. If I use the other, the first one disappears too. It's one component, but two ways to use it. What if I want variants that have completely different markup? So not changing some element or not, or showing it or not, but complete component based on some property, I show one or the other. Thematically, of course, they need to have to make sense. So these are both cards, right? But I have testimonial here, and I have a logo card here. But maybe I don't want different card components. I want just one and use it to show either type of card I need. How would I do that? I need to first create the component. So I'll start with testimonial card. I will right click and create component, and I will call it multi-card. I'll save and open, and as expected, now only one card is going to be here. I will add a div here inside the same component, go out, select the logo card and copy, go in my multi-card, select the div and paste. I need this div so I can select something to paste inside. But I will take it out and remove the div now. Okay, I'll quickly go out here and clear my grid here and go back to multicard. Okay, so now I am in one component with the two root elements, testimonial card and logo card. So what I need is one property. I'll choose select here. I'll call it variant again. I will say this is going to be I'm going to make the testimonial the default. And next is going to be logo. It's going to be logo. Now I'm going to select the testimonial card first. Go to conditions. Go dynamic. Select variant. Leave equals and type testimonial. Next, do the same here. Now that the conditions are set, I only see the default one. So I will go out and test how this works. I will duplicate this component. And on the first one, I'm going to leave the testimonial. On the second, I'm going to check if I can generate the logo version. So this allows me to have one component that serves various versions that are thematically linked, such as cards. Of course, for this to be complete, I also need to create other properties that I can use to change the content of these cards. So let's do that. I will first do the ones that I need for the testimonial. So I'm going to do something like this. Testimonial label. I'll go to my variant here and I will briefly switch what the default is. And then I'm just going to say, okay, so I have two properties here, my SVG and my image. So I'll use the text and say logo, SVG, then image, logo, image. I will link this to logo image, link this to logo SVG. Then I'm going to go back and make my testimonial the default. Link this to testimonial label, the quote to testimonial quote, the name to testimonial name, and the occupation with the occupation. Now we can test it. Here, select an image. Here, name. Here is another example where changing the complete structure might be useful. Here is an example of a site footer. I have set one true-false property, and depending on what is clicked, we can see the more complex and elaborate footer or simple one-line one. Last one, and this is a big one. The promise of component first development is that you reuse components in multiple places. And for this to really work, you have to work modularly, which means you should be able to nest simpler and smaller components in larger ones. But there is a catch. If you cannot reach properties of the child component from outside its parent, you are severely limited. Let me show you. We have here an image card with several items inside. I'll open one in editing mode, scroll down, and see that I already have properties for it. But let's say we need to add a button component inside it. So I'll select this text wrapper and go to my inserter and add a button. So now I've got a card component with a button inside of it. The button has its own properties. It has a label, it has a style variation, and it has a URL. If I need to change anything about the button, I need to enter the card component. So inside the card component, I can come here, I can select my button, and for instance, I can change to tonal style. And in this particular case, this makes sense. We want consistency, right? But what if I want to change the link? So let's say I want to link to /more, go out to the component, and hover over that button. I will see that every card now links to the same place. This very fact makes nesting in this way completely useless. We really can't use any interactivity in nested component this way. For this to make any sense and be actually useful, we need to be able to bring the properties of the button inside the card. That way we can select one instance, change it, another instance and change it, another instance, change it again. So let's do that. Go back inside the card component. To connect the card and the button via properties, we need to create properties for the button on the card component. So we will do something like this. I'll put some default value here. And now we have to bind these properties to the nested component. Select the nested component. And now all the properties of this component have the little plus button just like any other element has. So we can come here, button label, come here, button URL, go out. Now when we click on the card, we also have button controls. So we can say read more, learn more, click me. But more importantly, we can now link to specific links separately for every card. Now that is all about component variants for now. We showed 5 approaches. Class swapping for simple styling, shown on the button example. Data attributes for the same styling but with a cleaner approach. Conditional visibility, showing image or SVG, depending on what you want. Entire structure changes with complete different variants within one component. And finally, nested components with binding between the top component and the child one. Next up, we're going to show components and dynamic data, how they work together and bring it up a level again. Have a nice day. See you in the next video.